and we are going live on Facebook. So hello everyone, I'm so happy to have this new webinar at the beginning of this week. Ali will be moderating this webinar, and I'm going to let Ali now take the lead.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure. So my name is Ali. As you know, I am from the UK. I'm currently based in Qatar. Gradually getting better in terms of lockdown. Things are gradually opening up. Shops are starting to opening up. And we are here to connect with you guys and girls, ladies and gents from all over the world, just to share our thoughts and to really connect with you in terms of the future of education. How exciting is that? So joining me, we have Kate, Gaynor, and Niko. Kate, if you just very quickly could also introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, my name's Kate Beatty. I live in Germany, originally from the UK. I work as an educational consultant. Until the beginning of the pandemic, I was traveling the world working with schools. I do a lot with the IB, but also independently. And since then, I have been working mostly online.
Thank you. Gaynor.
Hi, I'm Gaynor Dale, and I'm the principal at Region International School. And Region is located in Dubai, in the UAE. I'm originally from the UK, where I have leadership experience of being a head and an SLT member. I've worked in various places, Kenya being one of them as well. So I enjoy the international setting, and I like hearing about everybody's experiences worldwide. So thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Niko.
Hi everyone, I'm Niko Lewman, and I'm the PYP coordinator and a grade 5 teacher here in International School Mainfranken, Germany. I have been a PYP coordinator over 14 years now, and I am a PYP workshop leader as well.
Thank you once again for joining us. So given our context of the global COVID-19 pandemic, many have been affected as a result of restrictive measures placed by governments all over the world in attempts to contain COVID-19 through lockdowns, stay-at-home orders, travel bans, closure of schools, colleges, and universities as we know it, temporary closure of businesses, with many of them never to be opened again as a result of financial losses. And as we know, education plays a critical role for us as human beings as we seek to grow. Right now, many organization schools are preparing for the gradual ease of restrictions, also with many already back at schools, in fact. And one question that comes to light for us as humans is, what can be learned? We can no longer assume that class education is the best education for learners, or can we? Kate, Gaynor, and Niko join us today to share their thoughts. So I'm going to fire away here. We're going to look at and think about what can be learned from this pandemic. And that first question just throwing out there to our panelists. And for our guests, please feel free to join in and do type into the chat box if any questions do arise, and we'll fire those questions out to ourselves and the panelists.
Would you like me to start?
Yeah, anyone. Yeah, totally. So it's, yeah, what can be learned from this pandemic?
Well, I don't think there's any of us that would deny that the last 3 months has probably been one of the greatest learning curves of our careers, really. And I think that what we've learned is that we have to nurture a workforce within our schools that is highly adaptable and highly flexible. It's not only have we had to learn various ways to teach and learn very rapidly in order to ensure that the kids don't lose any pace in their learning, but we've had to grow as people as well as individuals in our character. And I think that you know, those schools that have already nurtured a culture of taking risks and being open and transparent and not being afraid to admit when they're finding something difficult or they want to try something new. Those are likely to be the schools that have done the best in this period, because it's as much about the attitudes of all of us as it is about the actual pedagogy.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I would add to that I think that the pandemic, whilst none of us would have ever wanted it to have come along, has actually done something to highlight many issues that are entrenched in education systems globally. And this is an opportunity not to go backwards, when it's over, but to really think about what we want the future of education to be. A lot of my work focuses on 21st century education practices, and I think that is a very important topic for us to consider coming out of this pandemic. And we're not through it yet, with a lot of talk in the media about a second wave. We do need to be planning now for the future, as over the next few months.
Indeed, and I think that this is a great opportunity to kind of like, it's giving us a breather, a reflection moment where we can look at what were the practices that worked for our schools, and then what will we stop doing, what will we start doing, where are we going next, and how will we get better prepared when or if this second wave happens, and what are the steps that we can get where Gaynor was saying, that we very transparently also acknowledge that we don't know. We're trying this for the first time, and we'll see if it works this week, and then hopefully it works for the next.
Yeah, and it definitely opens up the opportunities, doesn't it, to really to experiment, to trial and error, and it really makes us also think about what is it that we need to do in terms of teaching, learning, and leadership. And going on to that goes into very well into our next question, which is about how might educational leadership change? And this is in terms of staff well-being, perhaps health, school structure, and school communities.
I think as a school leader, there's a sense at the moment that we need to step back from almost like the regulatory constraints that we have upon us. So we tend to find ourselves in a situation where we are we set up our schools and we run a provision that we know that the inspectors and the regulators will want to see, as well as maintaining that kind of uniqueness within our organizations. But I think this time is giving us permission, really, and an opportunity to really think about how we want our schools to look. It's quite liberating in a way as well, because we're all in exactly the same boat. And, you know, as Niko was saying there has to be a transparency, and leaders have to be able to say that we're also experiencing this for the first time. We don't have the answers. As the principal, people often look at you as the the fountain of knowledge and the person with all the answers, and we simply don't have them because none of us have ever been in this situation. So the leaders of schools need to be almost resetting their expectations and bringing their teams along in normal, because for sure it's the teachers that will have the answers at this time. They are the ones that are researching the platform. They're trying out different pedagogies online, and it's certainly been my teachers that have been the ones that have come to me and saying, I'm trying this and it's having a great impact, and look at what I'm doing. The leaders of the school have to allow that to happen and give that autonomy back to the teacher. So it's very much the leadership style in this period has to be very much bottom up and not top down.
And I think focusing on teachers a very important responsibility of educational leadership is the well-being of teachers. Many of us have heard many stories of different experiences had by teachers globally. And with billions of children out of school, many of those teachers were doing their jobs and caring for their own families at the same time. And it is a time when educational leadership must listen very carefully to their teachers, because teachers cannot carry, they can't work 18-hour days and weekends preparing. There has to be balance in their working lives. So a lot of very active listening and creative solutions is important, and then reflecting on the last few months in preparation for what may be another time outside school over the next year.
Yeah, it's really important that we look at it from a sustainability perspective, that we go further and look at the ways how we can support our teachers. Where is it the moment where we can take really the initiative and share the front line with our teachers, so that our teachers, whenever there is a possibility, we as leadership in a leadership role should be looking at those opportunities to take the spotlight and really assist our teachers and make sure that their tools, their toolbox is filled with tricks that they know how to use, so that the I think one of the biggest things, kind of an aha moment for me, has been that we need to be able to use those technologies and those things that we already have. We don't need to add to anything new onto this plate right now. So let's master what we already do really well and then move on.
I think that's really important to note, actually, because you know, we're always looking at ways to improve our practice and improve our schools, and that comes with a fair amount of change, doesn't it? And certainly as we go into new academic years, we tend to have our priorities and the changes that are going to take place. And I think for now, we just need to focus on the things that really need to be focused on, and make sure that we completely safeguard the well-being of the teachers and just protect them from a huge amount of change, because what they've had to go through in the last 3 months is significant, and no one in their wildest dreams would ever imagine they would have to deal with what they've had to deal with. So, you know, I think it's a time to, yes, adapt and be flexible and move with the times and make sure we're doing the very best we can in this situation. But I don't think it's a time for added pressure and huge amounts of change.
Yeah, a lot of conversation there as well around health and well-being of our colleagues and the people who we work with in such times, whether it's, you know, face-to-face or online. I've got a question here from one of our participants, which, you know, goes very well with our topic here. How do you promote teacher leadership in such a situation?
So
yeah.
I would really welcome that at this moment. I think that where Gaynor started saying that what are the support systems that how we can support our teachers, but it is also that there is that transparency and openness for being a risk taker. So when you are a risk taker, you acknowledge that you are comfortable in your role to make mistakes, and you know that you'll have your administration is there to have your back. We are going to support you, and that is one way how teacher leadership happens, when we say, yes, try, and is there anything I can do to help you to try even more?
And this actually, Ali, is connected to, I think, one of the next questions, which is
Yeah.
learning and teaching. We've seen an incredible outpouring amongst our colleagues of support for each other So not only did the teaching and learning go online, but people have come out of the woodwork, and they have taken on responsibility for supporting each other. And that networking, which was something I was going to point out with teaching and learning, is truly incredible. And that really is, you know, sometimes from teachers who haven't taken a leading role, they have come forward and they have offered their resources to support others. So that's something that I hope positively will continue, because truly it has been amazing. And I mean, even webinars like this one, the opportunity for professional development that we as educators have created collectively, it is quite wonderful.
I have to agree on that and build on that. The fact that the sharing and the ongoing learning has been absolutely incredible. Recently, there's so much going on online right now with all these, you know, free webinars and groups. In fact, Kate, you yourself had started an initiative online. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so because some of us had some more time, because normally we travel, working with schools, we set up a website, IB Global Classroom, although the resources on it are applicable if any of the people who are listening are in schools that don't have IB programs, and we share resources there, and we welcome all contributions, so that teachers who are looking for lessons or units have somewhere to go, where they can find resources that they can use quite quickly. Because one of the biggest issues teachers have found is with all of the additional responsibilities that some have had at home, and with online teaching, that the preparation and the need for materials that they can easily and quickly use has risen.
So what I will do, I will share that link in our chat box. I see that we have some participants who are interested, so I will just share that. It's free resources and it's out there for us to use and collaborate. Our next question is, so what should we as teachers be equipping ourselves with?
Well, as Kate already started, you should have a professional learning network. Professional learning network is one of the best ways to get us through in an event like this, where really to have a hive mind helping us out. And the same way as when Kate started the website, I immediately jumped in to offer my help and adding PYP guidance in there, because the second thing that you need and what comes through then from your professional learning network is that you need quality material and quality resources. And there's a lot of things on the web, but we don't have the time to sift through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages and links. So really it is to kind of find a way of those people who have more time maybe, and who have already done that for us, so that we can trust the quality of those resources when we access them.
I think that's a really useful thing to have. I mean, we're lucky in that we are a group of schools, so we can share resources, and also a very collaborative school, so we can share resources amongst the school as well. But it's the best time to be doing this and to really be encouraging that collaboration between all educators across the globe, because this whole pandemic has brought us all to a level playing field, hasn't it? There is no hierarchy here, because none of us have ever faced this before. So it's simply a matter of sharing what we know, and having a platform or a place where we can reach out to quality resources. Like you say, Niko, we haven't got time to be going through everything that's available out there, but educators collaborating together to come to, you know, to find the best solutions, to come up with the best platforms, the best ways of teaching and learning at this time. It's the best time to be able to do this, because we are literally all starting at the same point.
Yeah. And there's that saying, isn't there? We're all in this together. So, you know, we're all in the same boat, really. And this is what it's truly about, really, collaboration and just sharing and networking. So, will learning and teaching practices evolve? This is our next question here in regards to perhaps change in culture. I'll repeat that again. So, will learning and teaching practices evolve?
So I'm going to put on my middle high school hat here, and I'm going to say for a number of years, after we had one-to-one programs, the kids had computers and we had online learning spaces, I felt a bit frustrated, I have to say, that about the classroom environment, that very often classroom environments with older students are still very focused on the teacher. And I really tried in my classroom to push back to the students' responsibility in the classroom. And going back as they come back into school over the next months, many of them have had the experience of taking more responsibility, which is a life skill that they're going to need, and we want to teach them. So they've been at home and they've been organising their own learning. Even for some, they've been organising when they go to bed, when they get up, when they do their schoolwork. So I really would like to see us consider that in the light of what has happened more. I would like us to consider do traditional classroom environments in schools. Are they the most appropriate environment for our older students? Traditional lesson timetables, and the way we teach students, because those students who've very successfully been managing their own learning through their computers at home, I've been thinking about how they're going to feel when they come back, and it goes back to how it was before, and what they're going to have to say about that. So that's something that I would like us to begin to consider more.
I think that the children are going to have undoubtedly picked up skills in the last 3 months that, again, were beyond our wildest dreams, what we would have imagined, really. And I think it's about, as organisations, as school leaders and as teachers, really auditing what those skills are, because we can't lose what we've actually gained in the last 3 months. We need to push the opportunity to use those skills forward. Now, I'm not saying that we should now rely on technology, because that's not a healthy balance either, but we need to take what the children have acquired in terms of their refined learning skills and really evaluate the impact of the best practices, and look at how that aligns with classroom practice and where we can implement aspects of what we've done in the online world. You know, we've been talking for a long time in our school about a blended learning model, and we're very much advocates of facilitated learning, and this may have given us a platform to really push that, where we do get the children to direct their own learning, and then the facilitation aspect of it and the deeper learning, the deeper mastery really happens within the context of the classroom. So we need to take this as an opportunity, take the best bits of what we've learned and what the children have acquired, and align that beautifully with our pedagogy in the physical.
And really, what we need to look at here is that, as Kate was saying, we have students who have managed their online learning independently very well, and we have students who have not been able to manage that well. And really, I think that the skill sets, yes, the ATLs in the IB world are key to looking into what are the skills that our students, what are the self-management skills and the organizational skills that they need to successfully navigate in the 21st century world. But also, I think that at this moment, we have a great opportunity to really take a deep dive into personalized and individualized learning. And looking at that, how can we take, as Gaynor said, the best of this 3 months and take those things and see, okay, what worked well in our school? What were the things that allowed our students to thrive? And then take that into consideration of what can we change within our face-to-face teaching and implement those things. Within the primary program, we already have a lot of the great ways of looking at it in that there is a small classroom, small group action. We have learning centers or stations. Which one of those can we morph to be a personalized one into an individualized one? And what is the, the role of the teacher in this? Where is the facilitator? And is truly constructing the learning environment and making sure that the learning environment is a third teacher in that classroom.
I'm noticing that a lot of our interactions right now are actually answering the questions which are flying in by our participants. So I hope this answers a lot of the questions as well that are flying in. I'm going to pick a question out here and just plug it in. Okay, we've got a question here on assessment. We'll come on to that very shortly, so just hang in there tight. And we've got a question here. What are the things schools will keep from what we've been doing during e-learning? And I think we have just talked about that, haven't we? It's an opportunity for us to really reflect on what is working, what isn't working, and what can really be learned. Is there anything else that we could add to that? So there's a question here by Nada, in which it says, what are things schools will keep from what we've done during e-learning, particularly after we will return to teaching in our buildings? For example, parent-teacher meetings online were absolutely great, and our school is planning on carrying on this into the future.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose some teachers, the technology learning curve was very great. You know, it no longer was okay to say, well, I can't do that, because they just had to do it. So, I mean, that is something that will definitely be kept. I mean, we mustn't forget that we talk about our schools that were able to go online, but that isn't the norm across the world. There are millions of children who don't have access to technology. And maybe for governments, there will be something to consider there in terms of funding, because I mean, if this is to continue, there needs to be the possibility for more access to online environments for students across the world.
Gaynor, go ahead. No, go ahead, Gaynor.
I was just going to say, from a sort of from an organisational perspective, really, it's made us realise that there are no barriers to the ways that we can connect. Yes. So I actually like the idea of, I love face-to-face, I'm a people person, but if it's not possible to meet face-to-face, it's just highlighted to me that never needs to be a barrier, not in any situation. You know, staff meetings, reaching out to children, giving support to teachers, parent-teacher meetings, that there is literally no barrier to the way that we can connect. And I think that it will just help us to be more open-minded and efficient when you know, logistically planning the way that we hold meetings and the organisational side of things.
And Gaynor, I think there is something relating to lessons learned there as well, because I actually signed up as a participant in a course just to see, it's a language learning course, just to see how it would feel to actually be in that situation. And I don't cope very well in classroom environments or when I have to sit and watch somebody at the front of the room. And I found it a very positive experience to have the teacher here and the participants here, and I have concentrated much more effectively. So I've been wondering about how that looks in a classroom environment, and maybe some of our students would actually benefit from more of this up close experience in the classroom. And it's not just moving them to the front of the room, but what can we do to transfer that into the teaching and learning in our schools?
I have two things that I definitely will keep from this experience. And number one for me is a flipped learning model. And for me, it is all about me producing a short, and I'm not talking about quality video, I'm talking about a talking head video, just me explaining to my students a very short, less than 5 minutes, small snippets of instruction, so that my direct instruction will be mostly on a video format that my students can access at any time during the school day. So that allows me then to give personal assistance and guidance to then students who need that additional help. So it gives me more face-to-face time with my whole cohort. And my second thing is really the power of reflection. We used an app called Seesaw, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have worked with Seesaw, and it just highlighted the importance of recognizing and celebrating the wow work that those learners were doing. And this is regardless of grade level. It was great for my grade 5 students, but it was even more great for the grade 1 student who was taking a picture of his writing and samples and taking a picture and then narrating, telling me about it. So, and then being able to respond to the authentic reflection at that moment. So giving that timely feedback. That was 3 things, actually, sorry.
So the next question is, how might students be assessed?
I think that, again, this is an opportunity. So where Niko there was talking about how he's giving that timely feedback, it's almost like live feedback, isn't it? And that's the essence of fantastic assessment. What we need to be doing is making sure that we're giving feedback that is so live that actually there's no, the children are being supported and they're making progress in real time all of the time. They're not waiting for a summative assessment type to come along so that we can look and see how they did. We're doing that all of the time, and through these various sort of amendments to the way that we're teaching, learning, and giving feedback, either verbally or through the Seesaw app or through Microsoft Teams, however schools are choosing to do it. Those are the most impactful way, in my opinion, to assess the children. You know, external assessments are great, and there's a place for that, but really the best form assessment is the assessment that happens at the point in time that the children are learning, and through the virtual world it's necessary to do that. So I think assessment has actually probably improved in some ways at this time.
So considering external assessment, we did seem to see a move towards continuous assessment over the last 20 to 30 years. I think I was the first cohort to be continually assessed at the time of GCSEs. And now we've seen, certainly with the IB, a move back towards exam assessment. potentially connected to academic integrity. But I certainly hope if we have a rerun of this year, next year, that something is done, because it really is not acceptable that millions of students graduate from school without doing their external exams, if that's the system we have. Continuous assessment is a solution. And I know that there has been a lot of discussion on a government level. Some countries used lockable online environments for assessment. We do in the IB have that for e-assessment, so that would be an alternative with a restricted amount of time. But this whole discussion of external assessment for me is long, long overdue, that we still put our students at the end of courses in a room, give them a set amount of time and expect them from here to here to put all of the knowledge from the previous 2 years. So I really hope that that discussion happens over the next 2 to 3 months. We have a whole cohort who are in the middle of their final 2 years, and they will have been affected. And then to think that at the end of it, we could face again them being assessed only by their teachers. So perhaps it is time to put in to practice external standardization during the final 2 years of the diploma program for teachers, so that when the students are completing their assessments, the teachers really do understand what the external expectations in terms of grades are.
And from a primary perspective, assessment needs to be about the process. And as a teacher, you are there every step of that process. And so the documentation of a process-driven portfolio is a key into any online assessment that will be giving then us a valuable data, reliable data. Any other solution really for a primary is not going to be an authentic one. So really over this summer, my go-to professional development is to look at Jay McTighe's creating authentic performance tasks for primary.
And if schools can really have that opportunity and that flexibility, not just in IB schools, but other schools as well, if you can really give students choice, voice, and ownership of their learning, and really allow them to make those real life, wordly connections, it's going to really help them engage in, as Niko mentioned, authentic real life tasks. This is part of the key here. We have another question, and then we're going to very quickly move on to questions from our wonderful participants. Finally, what should matter the most in education?
The students.
Learning.
Of course.
The customers, the students. It's all about them and their learning.
Indeed, and in this time especially, it is about building relationships with our students. It is to know our impact, and it is to know our students, so that we can give them that personalized guidance, that we can give them that individualized attention that they truly deserve. And so from the beginning of lockdown time, my first videos were elaborate, and they were great, and they had effects, and it was great. And in the end, what mattered the most was that there was time to talk. Yeah. That was the most important part.
One thing that go ahead, Gaynor.
Yeah, just thinking that what should matter the most is how well we know our students as well, not just on an academic level, but on an emotional level as well. And you can only achieve that if you, like Niko says, take that time to actually talk in the context of the classroom and outside of the classroom, you know, we can plan all of the lessons that we want to plan, we can have all the targets that we want to set, but unless we truly know those individual children, we can't get there. So you have to afford yourself within the curriculum and outside the curriculum the time to really get to know each and every child.
Yep, and again, I'm going to throw that in again about health and well-being, you know, especially if we're talking about online learning, thinking about health from both student perspective and teaching perspective as well. For example, I remember at the start of this pandemic when schools had began to transition from working, you know, from home and transitioning with their school timetables. Me and Ali, you know, we were speaking about this some time back. We were wondering why some schools were copy and pasting their regular day-to-day schedules for online learning. You know, those are little things that we also need to consider. Time. Are we really going to make our kids sit in front of their laptops for, let's say, an English lesson or, you know, a science lesson for 1 hour? Will that work? So we really have to think about those timetables. And if we are going back into schools, which many of us are, for example, in my context here, we have planned for 3 timetabling schedules, one being either face-to-face, which would be absolutely fabulous if we could. The second one will be for online, to continue with online learning and teaching. And the third one, which many schools are already doing, which is the blended model, both online and face-to-face. So these are the things to also, you know, consider. I'm going to go on to some of the questions here. We are getting some questions about early years. I'm going to remind our participants that please do check out 4EDS on Facebook and LinkedIn. There is a session for the early years. Yeah. So please do check that out. So do sign up and you'll get the link and you'll be able to attend that. So just plugging that in. I'm going to go into some questions. How can we get parents on board with distance learning? Very interesting.
Well, I have 4 adult children who all were party to the one-to-one program, and I have been quite relieved that my children are now adults and I haven't had to do this. And I think, having heard some of the comments from teachers as well, that sometimes unless you've actually experienced this at home, it's very hard to imagine how it is. Making routines is very important. So managing your parents is very important in this process, because there needs to be a routine at home. But at the same time, I mean, it has been a wonderful opportunity for parents and children together to not be in that school routine, which I remember very well was pretty harsh a lot of the time, a lot of getting kids out of bed and into school and after school homework. So it's really about parents thinking about their family life and what works for them, and really them understanding that their role is to support, and that is their responsibility, is not to ensure. And as teachers and administrators, I think that we have to be very aware of that as well. That, I mean, it is possible as a parent to make sure it all gets done. I mean, certainly in my house, my husband often used to take too large a role in helping our children with homework, but it's about some of those techniques that we as teachers have learned, and perhaps holding some sessions for parents and helping them to understand their role.
I think also just to build on what you said there, Kate, it's that kind of sympathy towards parents as well of this situation. In the first 2 to 3 weeks of our learning, of our distance learning, the most time was spent by senior leaders actually supporting the parents. not necessarily with the actual content of the learning. There were technological issues, but there were definitely emotional issues. There were many parents that were really struggling to keep their children on task and to understand where their role was in this. So, you know, making sure that they understand, like you were saying, their responsibility, but where their role starts and the teacher's finishes, you know, and making sure that everybody understands what their part to play is in this huge thing that we're facing right now. So as the weeks have gone on, we've managed to make sure that we're all very clear on the expectations. We've put protocols in place to make sure that teachers are not inundated with questions from morning till night by parents, or that they're not indeed even joining the lessons and putting the teachers under undue pressure, but also being sympathetic to the parents and saying, look, we understand that this is difficult for you, and this is completely new, and we understand that it's difficult for you to get your child engaged in their learning, so therefore we're going to put measures in place that you can be a little bit more flexible in the way that you access it. So just that balance of real sympathy and understanding of each family's situation, but a very clear set of protocols and expectations of where the parents come into supporting their children. And it's become much better over the weeks, but in those early days, the first 2 to 3 weeks, that was a huge challenge, but time very well invested.
Yeah, it's all about communication, isn't it, Gaynor? It just boils down to that open, transparent communication and defining those roles and defining those expectations. And truly to also listen to the needs of your families.
So in the early days, we actually put the early feedback survey out so that we were really getting that data and responding to it really rapidly, and you know that helped to build up the trust and the relationship with the families as well, because they knew that we were listening, and you know, there was a very strong message from us that we hear you, this is what we can do to help, and these are the things that sometimes we can't as well. So yeah, communication really.
And I think as schools, you know, quite often we do put ourselves in the shoes of our parents and our students, because depending on where you are, whether it's the Middle East or in the UK or in India, we don't know what's happening with some of our students at home. We don't know what's really happening with our parents either. Again, I'm going to bring it back to the context here, where I am in Qatar. You know, I've heard about parents, you know, losing their jobs. I've heard about people who are on salary pay cuts. So it makes you really think, and this is where, going back to Gaynor, which we really have to think about, and you know, it brings in that attribute of, you know, just being caring and understanding with our audience, both parents, your colleagues, teachers, your SLT, and your students. And that nicely goes into the question that's been raised by one of our participants. She has asked, how can we cater social emotional needs during this pandemic? I think we've really talked about this, right?
Well, we have talked about, but also if we look at any special needs students that we have here, is also really to look into already to the solutions that have worked well. So what were the solutions that already worked well in your face-to-face environment, and are they replicable on an online situation? And to some of the more severe cases, they're not. So then how are we going to support those families who have these very diverse needs? And within special needs, we might have students who are very light sensitive, so they can't use the screens. So how are we going to then cater for these families? And then of course it becomes, well, it's a negotiation with those parents that we'll look at and say, well, we can provide you as a parent the information that is needed, and then the parent's role is then highlighted in this one as more of the delivery and facilitator, which of course is not ideal, but it is, again, we need to listen to each family's needs in this one. With social emotional learning here is, I think we've said that quite a few times, that it is really to open up a two-way communication so that we're not just delivering curriculum, that we are responding to our learners' needs.
We're getting a lot of questions, quite a few questions here around learning support. Are there any particular strategies that have worked for you guys, or anything that you have seen or you've heard about that you think has worked really well in terms of learning support?
Well, we've actually trained up and fully involved our learning support practitioners within our school. So again, steep learning curve, because these guys are not typically using the technologies within the classroom setting that the teachers are. So huge amount of learning gone on from the point of view of individual needs support assistants and learning support practitioners, but they are a valuable resource, highly skilled, and know the children implicitly. So we've made sure that those practitioners are well and truly involved in the online learning. And it might be that they access the first part of a lesson, and then they break off into small groups on teams to then be supported more personally, or in small groups, differentiated learning. So we've really just adapted how we would use our learning support in the class to support the children online. It's as simple as that. And that has been a huge factor in the success of the program, because we've made sure that in spite of the online learning, the children are not missing out on that real personalized care and academic support to reach their targets. And to have that person that knows them so well and works with them so closely still present in their lives at this time is for the children emotionally a really important contributor as well. So yeah, it's just that we've shifted it from the physical world online with a huge amount of support around those practitioners to ensure that they know how best to do their jobs.
I'll throw in another question there. We've got, what do you think are the key factors towards building resilience into education systems during this time of uncertainty?
Planning, organisation. This happened, there wasn't much notice to it. The response has been incredible, but now we do have notice that it may happen again. So this is a very important time. And I mean, as Ali, you said, with your 3 potential schedules, there really is no excuse for not being prepared for, hopefully it will not happen again. And I think I just want to say something relating to that, and that is that coming out of lockdown, many people are suffering emotionally, and their well-being is affected, and that will be a very important consideration going back when the kids come back into school, that their life, a lot of their life, really, quite a large percentage of their life now, will have been spent outside the classroom.
We'll get some really great questions in, and I'm trying my best to pick as many as I can and throw them in, because I'm also wary of time. I've got another one here. How can a teacher understand their students' psychology if we had to, or if we were to continue virtually? So I'll repeat again. So how can a teacher understand their students' psychology if we had to continue virtually? I think this really goes back to what we were discussing earlier about knowing our students individually and knowing their needs. I hope that really answers that, because we don't, like I mentioned earlier, there are some schools who will be going back face-to-face, some will be following a blended learning model or going completely online. It really is a moment for us to look at what is going well right now for us and what can be learned, what can we do to move forward, or even better, if that's a strategy that I like to use, with my students, which is what went well and even better if. So it's more about following a reflective process here.
And one thing, how can we get to know our students? So really, it's not about to, don't go back and do a diagnostic test the very first thing. Don't do that. Go in and have open-ended tasks, have show that there is no right or wrong answers, support every learner to be a risk taker so that they are able to open up to you as an individual and as their facilitator and as their teacher. And so once that happens, then we can start off doing diagnostics and get into that sort of rhythm. But it is really worthwhile of spending the first week, 2 weeks in building that learning community. You are now going to be in this learning community together, even if it's a physical one or an online one, digital one, so a virtual one. So really making sure that you connect. And by connecting, I mean that you are able to show that you care, that you are able to show that every answer counts. And that's wonderful with technology right now, is that we can use Flipgrid, we can use any type of digital platform that allows everyone's voice to be heard. So that utilize that, take those things in, and then bring it together.
Thank you very much. I want to say thank you to everyone, to all of our wonderful participants for joining us today. And most of all, thank you to our wonderful panelists, Kate, Gaynor, Niko. It's been a pleasure. Participants, please do stay connected with us. Do stay connected with 4Education's 4Ed. You can check them out via YouTube. We're on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and we're also on the gram. Get on Instagram as well. And there are some webinars which have already taken place. So do check them out on YouTube. Any final thoughts from Kate, Gaynor, and Niko before we close shop?
I'd like to wish all the teachers who've attended the webinar a very restful holiday, if they're going to be having one over the next 2 months, because I think teachers have worked incredibly hard, as have administrators.
I couldn't agree more, Kate. I think that this has just given our teachers the opportunity to really show what they're made of, and I feel proud to be in this profession. I do.
Indeed, please make sure that you are taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed the summer break.
Yeah, it was a great session. Thank you, Ali, for running this. Thank you, Kate, Gaynor, Niko, who accepted my invitation. The participants are very happy with all the discussion. Sorry if we didn't answer all your questions. I shared with you our last upcoming webinars, and then tomorrow you are going to get the link for the recording. They asked for your emails, so let me know if you don't mind sharing your email, Kate, Gaynor, Niko. I can send them also in the email. So maybe if someone has a question for you, they can text you as well. I'm going to stop the recording here. Thank you, everyone.